I'm Emma, 27F, and for my entire life, my mother, Diane, controlled every aspect of it. She used to tell me I'd be nothing without her, that I'd fail the moment I tried to make it on my own. She didn't just say it, she made sure I believed it. Growing up, it was just me and her. My dad left when I was young. I don't even remember him, just the stories Diane told me. According to her, he was weak, selfish, and a terrible father. But over the years, I started to wonder if that was true, or if he was just another person she suffocated until he had no choice but to run. Diane didn't raise me, she ruled over me. Every meal, every outfit, every class I took was dictated by her. I was never allowed to make my own choices. If I wanted something, I was too selfish. If I disagreed, I was ungrateful. She convinced me that simply existing in her house was a privilege, one that I owed her for. I spent most of my childhood walking on eggshells. Diane had a way of twisting reality. If she lost her temper and screamed at me, it was because I pushed her to it. If I was upset, I was being dramatic. If I ever questioned her, I was too young to understand. And if I ever brought up my father, she'd get this cold, distant look and say, "He left us, Emma." I'm the only one who stayed. By the time I was a teenager, I had no real friends. Diane made sure of that. She would nitpick every person I got close to, planting doubts in my head. She's using you, or he's jealous of you. It was easier to just keep to myself. Less exhausting. When it was time for college, I wanted to study creative writing. I had always loved books, and I dreamed of becoming an author. But Diane scoffed at that. She said writing was a hobby, not a career. Instead, she guided me into business administration, something practical, something that would keep me stable translation, something that would keep me under her thumb. I worked part-time in college, thinking I could finally have some financial independence. But every paycheck, Diane had a reason to take it. It's for the electricity or groceries aren't cheap, Emma. And if I ever resisted. The guilt trips came hard and fast. After everything I've done for you, you can't even contribute. The breaking point wasn't a big moment. It wasn't a screaming match or some dramatic revelation. It was a quiet realization that if I didn't get out now, I never would. So I started planning. I got a second online job, something small, just freelance gigs. Diane never knew. Every dollar went straight into an account she didn't have access to. It took a year of smiling through her insults, pretending I was still her obedient little girl while I built my escape in secret. Then I landed the job, a remote position with a salary good enough to live on. That same week, I signed a lease for an apartment. I kept it hidden until the last possible second. She found out when she saw my packed bags. The moment she realized what was happening, she exploded, screaming, throwing things, calling me every name in the book. Ungrateful brat, selfish little snake, you'll be back within a month, begging me to take you in. Then came the ultimatum. If you walk out that door, you're cut off forever. She said it like it was a threat, like it was supposed to make me hesitate. I didn't. I walked out without looking back. The first few months on my own were the best I'd ever had. No one controlling my every move. No one guilt-tripping me for existing. I could eat what I wanted, decorate how I wanted, go out without explaining myself. I was free. Then, 3 months later, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Diane's voice was shaky. For a split second, I thought maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe, for the first time in her life, she'd admit she was wrong. Nope, she had lost the house. Turns out, while she was lecturing me on how to be responsible, she hadn't been paying property taxes. And now the house was gone. She was calling because she had nowhere to go. The words were almost laughable. Diane, the woman who had spent years telling me I was helpless without her, was the one who needed help. I should have felt something. Pity, maybe. Guilt. But I didn't. For the first time in my life, I felt something else entirely. Power. The moment Diane started talking, it was obvious where this was going. The dramatics, the helpless tone, the way she hesitated just enough to sound pitiful. She had nowhere to go. She had lost everything. And somehow, it was my fault. She didn't ask directly. She never did. Instead, she danced around the subject, talking about how she'd always taken care of me, how she had sacrificed so much, how if she had just had a little help with the house expenses, maybe this wouldn't have happened. It was ridiculous. Diane had always acted like money was beneath her. She never worried about bills, never budgeted. Growing up, I noticed how she always had new clothes, expensive makeup, little luxuries she claimed she deserved. But when I worked in college and handed over my paycheck, it was like the house needed it just to survive. Before I left, I did some digging. She should have had money. She'd been working for years, had savings at one point, and even inherited a decent amount from my grandmother. But instead of securing her future, she spent recklessly, shopping sprees, luxury items, and impulsive splurges that drained everything before she even realized it. I asked her, bluntly, what happened to all of it. The second the words left my mouth, the helpless act cracked. She snapped. What kind of daughter talks to her mother that way? It was the same script she had used my whole life. The moment she was backed into a corner, she turned it around. I was ungrateful. I was cruel. I was abandoning her in her time of need. I told her she was an adult, just like she had always told me when I needed something. Figure it out. Silence. Then, the shift. Gone was the soft, desperate tone. Now she was furious. She ranted, called me selfish, accused me of turning into a cold-hearted bitch. Then, she went for the grand finale, the same line she had used the day I left. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. I hung up. The next day, I warned my building's management. I gave them her name and description, and told them under no circumstances was she allowed inside. They took it seriously. If she tried anything, she wouldn't get past the lobby. It took her less than a week to escalate. First, it was the phone calls. Different numbers, each one more frantic than the last. She left voicemails, long, rambling messages about how I was breaking her heart, how she was on the verge of homelessness, how she had done everything for me. I blocked every number. Then, she moved to Facebook. I woke up one morning to a flood of messages. Friends, coworkers, even people I barely spoke to were sending screenshots. Diane had made a long, dramatic post. It started with, "I never Diane wasn't done." After her social media stunt backfired and she realized no one was coming to her rescue, she got desperate. When guilt didn't work, when threats didn't work, she did what she always did. She tried to ruin my life out of spite. The first sign of trouble came through an email from HR. It was phrased carefully, professionally, but the message was clear. Someone had made a complaint about me. Something about unethical behavior and creating a hostile work environment. I didn't even have to ask who it was. Diane must have found my workplace through LinkedIn or some other trail I hadn't completely erased. She must have called, spinning a sob story about her ungrateful daughter and how she was concerned about my workplace conduct. Luckily, I had prepared for this. I had warned HR months ago that I had an estranged mother who might try to contact them. I had even shown them proof of her past harassment. Their response? A polite "we have to follow protocol," followed by an internal review that lasted all of a day. By the next morning, HR had blocked her number and flagged any future emails from her as spam. Diane had been shut down. But she wasn't done yet. Next, she reached out to my ex. I got a message out of nowhere. A name I hadn't seen in years. At first, I thought it was some weird coincidence. Then I opened it. Apparently, Diane had found him through social media and reached out, telling him I had changed, that I was out of control, that she was worried about me. She tried to paint herself as the concerned mother, hoping to recruit him into whatever scheme she was cooking up. Unfortunately for her, he had experienced Diane firsthand. He sent me screenshots of everything, along with a simple, "Figured you'd want to see this." That was the end of that. And yet, somehow, Diane still didn't get the message. Her next move? Another public meltdown on Facebook. This time, she didn't just make vague posts about how her daughter had abandoned her. She went full nuclear, making outright false claims about me, accusing me of elder abuse, of stealing from her, of being some heartless monster who had tricked people into believing she was the villain. She thought she was untouchable, that she could say whatever she wanted and people would believe her. What she didn't expect was that I was ready. I had receipts, financial records showing how she had taken every cent I earned for years, screenshots of manipulative messages, even old recordings of her gaslighting me, telling me I was lucky she let me live under her roof. I didn't just sit back this time. I took everything, the proof, the evidence, and sent it to the few family members who still spoke to her. I posted it under her Facebook rant, publicly. The silence that followed was deafening. Within hours, Diane deleted the post. But the damage was done. People had seen it. People had shared it. The few relatives who still tolerated her saw exactly what she was. At first, some people still believed her. They pitied her, bought into the sob stories, even sent her money. But the cracks started to show. When she asked for more, when her lies didn't line up, when her desperation became obvious, they started pulling away. It wasn't an instant collapse. It was a slow, inevitable erosion of everything she had built on manipulation. That's when she snapped. I don't know what was going through her head when she made the decision, but the next thing I knew, my building's security was calling me. She was here. She had shown up at my apartment. I don't know what she thought would happen. Maybe she thought she could scream her way back into control. Maybe she thought I'd panic, that I'd let her in, that she could manipulate me the way she used to. She didn't even make it past the lobby. I had already spoken to management months ago. They had a picture of her, a clear instruction, under no circumstances was she to be let in. They called security. Within minutes, she was being escorted out. I stood at my window, watching as she ranted and raved, demanding to be let inside. When she realized no one was listening, she turned her rage upward, toward my window. She screamed at me, shouting threats, swearing that one day I'd come crawling back, that I'd regret this. I just stood there, watching. And then, for the first time, I closed the curtains. That was it. That was the moment I knew she had no power over me anymore. After that, everything felt lighter. The weight I had carried my whole life was finally gone. I focused on my work, my friends, things I had never been allowed to enjoy before. And then, I did something I never thought I'd be able to do. I booked a trip. Diane had always told me I'd never be able to afford travel without her, that I was too naive, too helpless, that the world would eat me alive without her protection. So I proved her wrong. Sitting on a beach, feeling the sun on my skin, I realized something. She was wrong. I wasn't nothing without her. I was finally something. For a few weeks, there was silence. No phone calls, no emails, no sudden appearances at my apartment. After the security incident, Diane had finally gone quiet. It was almost strange, like a weight I didn't realize I was still carrying had finally been lifted. I started to think maybe, just maybe, she had given up. Then out of nowhere, an email appeared in my inbox. Subject, let's talk. The message was polite. Too polite. Diane wrote as if nothing had happened. No mention of the screaming, the Facebook meltdown, or the time she tried to get me fired. Just a casual, "I miss you. Let's reconnect as family," like she hadn't spent the last few months trying to ruin my life. I didn't respond. At least not right away. Diane never apologized unless she wanted something. And I wanted to know exactly what she was after this time. So I replied. Short, simple, non-committal. That's when the real performance started. She launched into a long, dramatic story about how she had been struggling, how she had lost everything and had nowhere to go. She painted herself as a tragic victim, abandoned by the only person she had ever loved. She was homeless. She had no options, and all she wanted was a little kindness. It was a good story. It was also a complete lie. I already knew through distant family that she wasn't homeless. She was staying with an old friend, someone gullible enough to fall for her sob stories. She wasn't struggling. She was just miserable that no one was letting her manipulate them anymore. Still, I played along. I asked what she was hoping for, and there it was. She wanted to move in with me, just for a little while. The woman who swore I would come crawling back was now the one crawling. I responded with exactly what she used to tell me every time I needed help growing up. You're an adult. Figure it out. Diane's mask slipped immediately. Within minutes, another email came through, and this one was pure venom. The guilt trips, the name-calling, the dramatic accusations. I was heartless, ungrateful, selfish, a disgraceful daughter. And then just like clockwork, she switched tactics again. Since guilt wasn't working, she tried money. Suddenly, she remembered that she had paid for my college tuition. According to her, I owed her thousands of dollars in reimbursement. The problem? That was another lie. Diane had never actually handled those payments. My dad had covered them entirely. But in her mind, the mere fact that she had let me attend college under her roof meant she was entitled to something in return. I didn't argue. I didn't get emotional. I just sent her an email back with scanned copies of the tuition records, my dad's name on every single payment. Then I added one last line, try again. The next email came within minutes. 10 paragraphs. I didn't read a word of it. I didn't need to. I responded with exactly one sentence. This is my last response. If you contact me again, I will take legal action. Then I blocked her. Phone, email, social media, everything. The silence that followed was real this time. For the first time, I wasn't scared. I was in control, and I was winning. It started with a phone call at work. My boss pulled me aside. HR had received an anonymous complaint about me. According to the complaint, I had been stealing company resources and creating a hostile work environment. It was completely ridiculous. I worked remotely most of the time, and when I was in the office, I barely interacted with anyone outside my team. But HR still had to follow protocol, which meant an internal review. It didn't take long to figure out who was behind it. Diane had already tried to get me fired once. Now that I had blocked her everywhere, she was getting desperate. She must have found the company's contact information and thought this would be her way in. The HR review was quick. My emails, project records, and work performance all spoke for themselves. The complaint fell apart instantly. The HR rep barely kept a straight face when going over the claims, especially when they saw the anonymous email that had been sent from an account clearly created just for this. By the end of the day, Diane's number and email were blocked across all company systems. But she wasn't done. A few days later, my landlord called. Apparently, someone had reported me as a dangerous tenant. According to the complaint, I was unstable, violent, and a threat to the other residents. It didn't take long for my landlord to dismiss it. I had never missed a payment. No complaints had ever been made against me. I had a solid rental history, and I had already warned him months ago about my mother's harassment. He laughed it off. But I didn't. I was done. I called Diane. She picked up immediately, probably thinking she had finally gotten a reaction. Before she could even start talking, I cut straight to the point. If you try to ruin my life one more time, I will take legal action for harassment and defamation. Silence. Then, the usual dramatics. She wasn't harassing me, she was just trying to reach out. She was worried about me. This was breaking her heart. Then, the guilt trips. She was sick. The stress I was causing her was making her worse. She wasn't eating, she wasn't sleeping. She was struggling to stay afloat. I hung up. The next phase of her meltdown began immediately. Distant relatives, people I hadn't spoken to in years, started reaching out. A cousin, an aunt, even an old family friend. Each message was the same. Some version of, she's your mother. You only get one. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive her? It was clear Diane had been working overtime, spinning a sob story to anyone who would listen. I didn't argue. I didn't try to explain. I just sent them proof. Screenshots of her Facebook rants, records of the money she had taken from me, emails where she had tried to manipulate me, the legal warning I had just given her. And then, just to drive the point home, I ended with one question. If someone else did all this to me, would you be telling me to forgive them? The silence was instant. One by one, the messages stopped. Diane had officially lost the last of her flying monkeys, but she still had one last move. Her final Facebook meltdown was the worst one yet. This time, she didn't just play the abandoned mother. She took it further, accusing me of elder abuse and neglect. She made up stories about how I had used her, how she had sacrificed everything for me only for me to turn my back on her. She wanted pity. She wanted outrage. She wanted people to see me as the villain. Instead, she got exactly what she deserved. I reported the post. Facebook took it down within hours. Then I blocked every single person who had commented in support of her. And just like that, she had nothing left. No friends, no family, no allies, nothing. For the first time, I felt real peace. She was finally out of my life. Completely. A few months passed with nothing but silence. No phone calls. No emails. No sudden Facebook meltdowns. For the first time in my life, it felt like Diane was truly gone. Then, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. At first, it looked like junk mail. A plain white envelope, no return address, just my name in bold black ink. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. Legal documents. Diane wasn't done playing the victim. She wasn't pleading for help, she was grasping for control, using the legal system as her latest weapon against me. The claim? Emotional distress and financial reimbursement. She was demanding money for all the sacrifices she had made raising me, saying I had financially ruined her by cutting her off. She even threw in an emotional damage claim, saying I had abandoned her in her time of need, causing severe mental suffering. It was so absurd I almost laughed. Instead, I called my lawyer. The moment he read through the documents, he actually did laugh. It was one of the weakest cases he had ever seen. No receipts, no proof, just page after page of emotional manipulation dressed up in legal jargon. He told me we could get it dismissed in minutes, but I had a better idea. Instead of just shutting it down, I countersued. For harassment, for defamation, for emotional distress. Diane wanted a courtroom, I'd give her one. The case moved forward, and suddenly she had to provide actual evidence for all her claims. She had none. No proof she had ever supported me financially beyond basic parental duties. No medical records showing she had suffered distress. No documentation of anything. And it got worse for her, because I had receipts. Bank records proving she had drained my earnings for years. Screenshots of emails where she had harassed and threatened me. Records of false reports she had made to my employer and landlord. Even the Facebook rants she had deleted, because I had saved them. It didn't take long for the judge to see through her act. The case dragged on for weeks, but Diane's claims unraveled fast. Without financial records or evidence, her argument collapsed under scrutiny. The judge wasn't amused. Not only was her case dismissed, but she was ordered to pay my legal fees, a final slap of reality she hadn't seen coming. Diane lost it. Right there in the courtroom, she started screaming, ranting about how I was a horrible daughter, how I had ruined her life. She turned on the waterworks, wailing about how she had nothing left. No one cared. The judge had enough. My lawyer calmly requested a restraining order. The judge approved it on the spot. That was the final nail in the coffin. With legal fees piling up and no one left to manipulate, Diane was officially financially ruined. Her last few friends, people who had still believed in her act, started distancing themselves. Nobody wanted to be involved in the mess she had made. She was alone, completely. But of course, she couldn't let that be the end. A few weeks later, another letter arrived. This one wasn't from a lawyer. It was handwritten, messy, desperate. Diane was dying. She was sick, helpless, and I was her only hope. I didn't even open the rest. I shredded the letter without reading it. That was the last time she ever tried to reach me. For the first time in my life, she was truly gone. I booked another solo vacation, sitting on a beach miles away from everything she had ever done to me. This time, there was no fear, no guilt, just peace. Months passed. No emails, no blocked number attempts, no Facebook meltdowns, just silence. Diane was gone. For the first time in my life, I could breathe. There was no looming threat of her next move, no weight of guilt dragging me down. My world had finally become mine, and I threw myself into it completely. Work became my focus. Without the stress of constantly looking over my shoulder, I started excelling. Promotions, recognition, I was finally getting the success Diane had always claimed I'd never achieve without her. But the real change? My social life. For years, I had kept people at arm's length. Diane had trained me to see friendships as dangerous, as something temporary, something that could be turned against me at any moment. It wasn't easy unlearning that, but with time I did. I reconnected with old friends, deepened the bonds I had kept hidden, and for the first time, I let people in. That's how I met Jake. At first, I kept my guard up. I had spent years expecting people to want something from me. But Jake was different. He didn't push, didn't demand. He was just there. Over time, through quiet consistency and patience, he became the one person I didn't have to second guess. Slowly, consistently, proving he was there not because he wanted something, but because he cared. But Diane had done her damage. Trust wasn't something that came easily. Every time things felt good, I waited for the catch. I expected the rug to be pulled from under me. Small disagreements felt like warning signs. Moments of vulnerability felt like traps. Jake noticed. He didn't push, didn't pry, just encouraged me to get help. So I did. Therapy wasn't an overnight fix, but it helped. Piece by piece, I started untangling the mess Diane had left behind. The fear, the guilt, the deep-seated belief that I was only worth what I could give to others. It was exhausting, but for the first time, I felt like I was moving forward, not just surviving. Then, out of nowhere, she came back. The call came late. An unknown number. Normally, I ignored them, but something in me knew. I picked up. Diane's voice was shaky, tired. Not the usual fake dramatics, something else. Something weaker. She hesitated, then went into her speech. She was homeless. She was sick. She had nowhere to go. She made it sound like a confession, like it physically hurt her to admit she needed help. She didn't beg, not outright, but she made it clear that I was her only option. I listened. Then I reminded her, this was the life she created for herself. Silence. Then, the switch. Suddenly she wasn't the victim anymore. She was the forgiving mother. She was ready to start over. She wanted to put the past behind us. She was willing to move forward. It was a test. She wanted to see if I would fold, if the idea of a normal mother-daughter relationship would be enough to pull me back in. I didn't fall for it. I told her I'd only consider it if she admitted to everything she had done, if she took accountability, if she got professional help. The explosion was instant. She called me selfish, cruel, brainwashed. She accused me of twisting the past, of turning into someone unrecognizable. I let her rant. Then, I ended it. There's nothing more to say. I hung up. I blocked the number. For the first time, there wasn't even a flicker of doubt. Diane was never going to change, and I was done waiting for an apology that would never come. It started with a message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. At first, I thought it was another flying monkey act, some distant relative trying to guilt me into giving Diane another chance. But the second I opened it, I realized this was something else. Diane had been arrested. I sat there, staring at the screen as the details came in. Fraud charges, multiple victims. Someone had reported her, and now she was facing real legal trouble. Turns out, she hadn't just been harassing me all these years. She had been running a long con, scamming people out of money. She had been posing as a desperate single mother in need of help, spinning sob stories to anyone who would listen. Church groups, charities, even strangers online. She took donations, promised to pay people back, and disappeared the moment they started asking questions. And it wasn't new. This had been going on for years. Long before I ever cut her off, Diane had been manipulating people for money. I wasn't her only target. I was just the one she had direct access to. Until I wasn't. And when I stopped being her supply, she had to move on to other victims. This time, she messed with the wrong person. Someone with enough evidence, enough patience, and enough rage to go straight to the authorities. Now, Diane wasn't just broke, she was in real trouble. The news spread fast. People she had lied to, people she had taken money from, People who had always believed her until now, they were all coming out of the woodwork. It was like watching a dam break. One person spoke up, then another, and another. The stories piled up. The devoted mother abandoned by her ungrateful daughter. That image was gone. This was who she really was. And for the first time, there was no escaping it. I should have felt something. Relief, satisfaction, maybe even the sting of old guilt trying to creep in. But all I felt was exhaustion. This wasn't some triumphant moment. It was just the inevitable end of a story I had already lived through 1,000 times in my head. But of course, family couldn't leave it alone. A distant aunt, someone who had never bothered to reach out before, suddenly found my number. She's still your mother. She has no one else. You don't have to forgive her, but you should at least help her. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just said, she stopped being my family the day she chose control over love. Then, I blocked her. Diane had finally run out of lifelines. No money, no friends, no one left to manipulate. She was truly alone. Jake noticed how calm I was. No anger, no guilt, just acceptance. He told me how proud he was of how far I'd come. And for the first time, I realized he was right. I had spent years waiting for Diane to be different, waiting for an apology that would never come. But therapy had helped me see the truth. Diane never loved me, not in the way a mother should. She loved control. And when she lost it, she had nothing left. A few weeks later, a final letter arrived, handwritten, begging me to visit her in jail. I didn't read it. I ripped it up. And just like that, I chose myself. Something Diane always feared I'd do. A year passed. A full year with no Diane. No manipulative phone calls, no sudden smear campaigns, no lurking threats waiting to explode. Just peace. I had moved to a new city, taken a promotion at work, and built a life that was fully my own. I had real friendships ones Diane never got the chance to poison. I had weekends filled with laughter, trips planned on a whim, and mornings where I woke up without the heavy weight of my past dragging me down. And I had Jake. Somewhere along the way, what started as cautious trust had turned into something solid, something real. He never pushed, never rushed me. He just showed up, over and over, until I stopped expecting him to disappear. Then, one evening, he got down on one knee. For a second, the past tried to creep in. Diane's voice, her doubts, her sneering predictions that I'd never be loved, never be enough. But she wasn't here, and she never would be. So I said yes. Planning the wedding was surreal. Every milestone, every moment, I expected to feel that familiar tension, that waiting for disaster to strike, for Diane to ruin it somehow. But she wasn't here to meddle. This time, the people around me were real. My friends, my chosen family. No one who smiled to my face while plotting against me. No one who saw me as something to control. Just people who loved me for me. Even therapy had changed. The sessions, once filled with unraveling trauma, were now focused on the future. My therapist told me I had reached the final stage. And for the first time, I believed it. Diane, on the other hand, she was still exactly where she belonged. An old acquaintance from my hometown reached out, casually mentioning that Diane was still in prison, still spinning the same sob stories, still blaming everyone but herself. She was the victim in her own mind. It was the system's fault, the court's fault, my fault. But none of it mattered, because she didn't matter. I wasn't angry. I wasn't relieved. I just didn't care. But there was one last thing to do. I legally changed my last name. The final link to Diane. Gone. No more explanations. No more questions about, are you related to? That part of my life was over. And then the wedding day arrived. I stood at the start of the aisle, surrounded by love. Friends, new family, people who had chosen me just as much as I had chosen them. This was my moment. And for the first time, I didn't have to share it with Diane's shadow. But of course, she had one last move. A letter arrived the week before the wedding. She wanted to come. She wrote about how she had changed, how she deserved to be there, how deep down we were still family. I didn't hesitate. I threw it away. No tears, no second thoughts. Just a quiet, simple ending to something that should have ended a long time ago. As I walked down the aisle, I realized this was the moment Diane always swore would never happen. I had built a life without her, a happy one. She told me I'd be nothing without her. And yet, here I was, everything.